I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that things in the UK are really quite weird right now. Energy prices have skyrocketed, and there are now fears that we will undergo rolling blackouts come winter just to survive. Inflation is at sky high levels and has just broken those levels once more, and it's created a cost of living crisis that is affecting everyone in the country. We are constantly being threatened with nuclear annihilation by the Russian government, and of course the last few months have seen us totally embroiled by political instability as well. Now, you seem to really value and enjoy the videos I've made about the problems in the UK before, either because you appreciate seeing and hearing what's going on from a British perspective, or because you're mean and you like me to suffer. Either way, I'm here to tell you exactly what's happened over the last week in the UK, because boy, did things take a drastic turn since the last video I made. So to start off, a super insanely quick recap of where we all left off last week, because I'm sure most people know at this point, but we used to have Boris Johnson as our Prime Minister, and he ended up with a load of different scandals, and so he was ousted by his own party. The ruling party, the Conservatives, then got to choose a new leader, and they settled on Liz Truss. She came out with quite a radical reform budget and proposed a load of tax cuts and spending boosts to try and grow the economy, which usually would be very normal for a right-wing economic government. But the problem is we have sky-high inflation, so stimulating the economy is one of the worst things you can do right now. Because of this, investors all over the world lost faith in the British government and the British economy, and so financial turmoil started. We saw the pound crash against the dollar as low as $1.03, and we saw pension funds all over the country almost collapse as their assets had instantly shrunk by 10 to 15% overnight, and they were grossly over-leveraged. The Bank of England then came to the rescue and turned the money printer back on, or started up quantitative easing back again, to use the official terms, but it was only for a week to give pension funds a chance to sort themselves out. Then we saw Liz Truss announce that she was going to U-turn on some of her tax policies and return the country and our basic governance back to normality as a result of the huge backlash against her plans. Now that is mostly what happened over the last 3 months, and it's where we left off from our last video as well. The pound is in the toilet, though not as bad as it was, but still way off from where it used to be a few months ago. A whole bunch of British equities have dumped as well, and no one was really sure what was going to happen next, but we definitely didn't expect what actually happened. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably pay attention to the markets, and 2022 so far has been incredibly turbulent, especially for those of us in the UK. We've seen the S&P 500 tanked by over 25% at the exact same time as bond prices have crashed, inflation has soared, and traditional inflation hedges like gold have failed to perform. It's no wonder then that people are seeking alternative assets that have the potential to resist these awful market conditions. And that's where this video's sponsor Diamond Standard comes in. They allow you to invest in the world's newest asset class through the world's first diamond commodity that's fully regulated, and Diamond Standard even went through the extra steps to be voluntarily regulated by the Bermuda Monetary Authority as well. You now have the opportunity to invest in diamonds just like you can with gold by purchasing a standardized Diamond Standard coin or bar. Again, just like with gold, once you own it, you can leave it with its custodian or have it sent over to yourself for safekeeping, and you can trade your assets at will on the spot market, meaning liquidity is no issue. For the first time ever, standardization has come to this asset that will allow anyone to invest in it. The pent-up demand is there and it's ready to be unleashed, as Diamond Standard have also released a fund that you can invest in through your self-directed IRA to save on some of those pesky taxes. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if the idea of a brand new commodity with the potential to be a true inflation hedge sounds at all appealing, then make sure to check Diamond Standard out with the link down below in the description. Again, that's Diamond Standard with the link down below in the description. Now, lots has changed in the last week since I made that video explaining what happened on these British Isles, so please strap in. Now, from a financial markets point of view, things did actually improve, just not by a huge amount. The pound recovered from its lowest point of $1.03 to about $1.13, where it's currently sitting. And that's not great, but it is actually pretty much where it was before the budget that actually shook the markets was announced. We also saw the Bank of England announce a restart to quantitative easing, and that scared a lot of people, including myself. This was considered by many to be a pivot, and the markets especially considered it a pivot, and so investors got excited on the short-term prospects of loose monetary policy, but all of that would really just mean in the long term we see more inflation, so even bigger rate hikes in the future. So it was never actually good news, but a bunch of investors convinced themselves it was. This effect was so large that even American equities, yes, the US stock market actually rose on this news, on the idea that if the Bank of England has now pivoted, then maybe the Fed will pivot as well. Thankfully, though, that turned out not to be the case. The Bank of England said this process would only be short and sharp to assist markets, and despite increasing the size of the intervention for a few days, which was worrying again, they did end up sticking to their word there. Quantitative easing has so far not been permanently turned back on in the UK, which is categorically good news, as bad inflation getting worse is never a good thing. We also have news from pension funds, and it turns out that they haven't collapsed, which is again a good thing. It seems that they did take the Bank of England at their advice, and they said, okay, yes, we're going to deleverage so we don't collapse when this monetary support ends. And that means that this particular British Lehman moment is not going to come. Now, on the finance side, most things seem okay then, right? And yeah, that is a pretty fair assessment here. On the finance side, things are okay, but that really doesn't give the whole picture as to just how chaotic this last week has been. Now, on the political side and the economic side, things are absolutely not okay, and they are pretty much as bad as they have ever been. We'll start then with the political side, because what's happened here is literally insane. Now, Liz Truss fired her Chancellor, who was credited with coming out with this revolutionary plan to grow the British economy, and with him gone, that means most of the budget which actually caused all this turmoil in the first place is gone as well. Gone is the top rate of tax cuts for those who were going to be paying 45% income tax, and gone is the bottom rate of tax cut, which brought the lowest rate of income tax from 20% down to 19%, and gone is the corporation tax cut that went from 25% to 19%, and gone is pretty much every other thing of note that we saw in that budget. Kwasi Kwarteng, the previous Chancellor, has been replaced by this man you can just see me just here, called Jeremy Hunt, who is pretty ridiculously unpopular in the UK. Honestly, the hatred I've seen from him is pretty insane and kind of unrivaled, and it spreads all over across the political basis from both sides of the spectrum. He is not a popular man at all. He is, though, the new Chancellor of the United Kingdom, but with him arriving, it seems that Liz Truss's power is starting to disappear. Now, to be clear, she is still officially the Prime Minister, but word on the street is that she's now merely a puppet of Jeremy Hunt. Many of her party members have expressed that they'd like her gone altogether, and it seems like the only way she could really hold on to her job is if she let Jeremy Hunt come in and take control of things so he can run things from behind the scenes. That would explain why he's now thrown out all of the previous economic plans, which were actually a large part of Liz Truss's plans. The idea that it was all Kwasi Kwarteng who pushed this idea just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The problem is that this act alone is also very unpopular, and so we sort of have 4 different major movements inside the ruling party in the United Kingdom. We'll get on to what those 4 are in a moment, but I've had to edit this video because as I'm making this video right now, things are just exploding. Yesterday, for you watching this, we had another huge fiasco with this massive vote on fracking, which is very controversial in the UK, and that combined with the turmoil already seen has resulted in a bunch of government officials resigning and calling on Liz Truss to resign even more. Suella Braverman, who was incredibly high up in the government, she was Home Secretary, that's like top 5 most powerful people in the country. She's either been fired from her job or resigned. It's really not clear as I'm making this video, and she is very senior in the government, as I said. We've also seen a bunch of different government whips who literally have the job of ensuring that the PM's orders are fulfilled. They're now quitting as well. And so I have no idea who's going to enforce order within this party. It really does seem like this party is about to fall apart. Now, as for those 4 different factions sort of toying with each other, we have those who want Liz Truss in power. We have those who want Jeremy Hunt to control things from behind the shadows. We now have a new resurgent group of MPs like Nadine Dorries who want Boris Johnson reinstated as Prime Minister. And then we have those who want another leadership election to pick another new leader. I hope it's clear from my tone and just this entire video that this is totally insane. And for British politics, things really aren't usually this unstable. Even throughout all of the madness we had throughout Brexit, this just throws all of it out of the window. It's so mad. The Conservative Party usually likes to portray itself as a safe conservative option for the electorate. This is the total complete opposite of that. Now, just some evidence of the chaos that this is causing on our politics in our country is this brand new disagreement, which is now almost outdated, even though this news is only 1 day old at the time you're watching this video. But there's this disagreement about triple lock pensions. Now, the details of the policy aren't too important for the purposes of this video, but Liz Truss came out and said that the government is sticking with this policy at the same time as Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, came out and said, no, we will not stick with this policy. It's dead in the water. And simply put, no one knew who to believe at all because no one really knows who's actually in charge. As a result of this, no one knows what's going to happen at all in British politics. My bet, and what most people are saying at this point, when I first wrote that note, no one knows what's going to happen. This whole fiasco with fracking and Suella Braverman getting fired or quitting hadn't happened yet. My bet is that we're going to see the Conservative Party completely fall apart. We're going to see an early election called in the United Kingdom. Labour will win this election by a landslide, which on the surface does seem a little bit worrying, as Labour don't have a good track record. In fact, they have an awful track record when treating inflation with its deserved reverence. But to be perfectly honest, the Tories have also shown that total lack of respect for inflation and for basic economic principles over the last few years as well. So will it be really any worse under Labour? I don't know, and I can't really imagine it being any worse than this here now. On the plus side of things, the financial markets have started to calm down, but are the problems that actually caused those little tantrums in the first place solved? Well, no, not at all. Inflation is still insanely high, and it actually just went up over the last month as well to a brand new 40-year high of 10.1%. People had been confident about inflation dropping over coming months, as there was this support for energy prices from the government, which would essentially be a price cap that had been announced. But it now seems that that support is going to be reduced. But again, we don't really know because we don't know who's in charge. Now, that does mean that inflation is probably not done rising, though. Also, the war in Ukraine is the reason for this energy crisis in the first place, and that's still ongoing. So there is no end to the problem there on any fundamental level anytime soon. The UK is still facing a struggling economy too, but it is actually in 2022 one of the best performing developed economies in the world somehow. It's one of the only ones not officially in a recession according to the definition of 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Compared to the US or most of Europe, it's actually doing better, but it's still not good at all. Gilt yields, or basically just the cost of government debt, is still rising just as it is all over the world, and that's not going to change either, and that will present a problem for whichever government ends up being able to govern this country. So that's not good news either, and that's pretty much where we are today. Things are just about stable on the financial markets front, but on every other front they're not, and that means that the markets are probably going to go a little bit haywire before long as well. As usual, I guess you guys like to hear what's going on from a British point of view, and I get quite a lot of accusations of me being biased against the US or Russia or China. I know it's amazing, I'm biased against every government because I talk about them a lot, but the simple fact is they're more important countries than the UK when it comes to my view as to what you guys actually care about and what will impact your investments. So that's why I mostly focus on them. The only reason I'm covering the UK so much right now is because it's just completely unprecedented stuff that's going on. No one really knows what's happening, and you guys seem to like my insight on this. Hi guys, now I made that video that you literally just watched about 9 hours ago from where I am right here today, and that video is now already outdated. I made it at about 1 a.m. in the morning to make it as close to the upload time, which is today, as possible, so that it would be as accurate as possible, but already it's outdated because Liz Truss, the Prime Minister of the UK, has literally just resigned about 10 minutes after me, before I'm making this video talking to you now. So I thought I'd very quickly just update you on the newest situation so that the video that you watch today isn't hopelessly out of date. So she's going to stay on as Prime Minister for 1 week, and during that time there's going to be another leadership election in the Conservative Party to find out who the new Prime Minister is. Once that leadership election is over, she's going to stand down and we'll have a new Prime Minister and probably an entirely new government, because Prime Ministers tend to pick their own Home Secretaries, Foreign Secretaries, Chancellors and officials to go along with them. Now, the way this election is going to work is probably, this isn't 100% sure, but it seems like the BBC and other news outlets are saying that this is going to be purely internal. So only members of parliament will get to vote on this new prime minister. Now, this is bad if you like democracy from the people, but it's good if you like stability for the country, because one of the major reasons that Liz Truss has struggled so much is because she had fewer government officials, members of parliament supporting her for this leadership bid than her opponent Rishi Sunak, but she had more grassroots support from the low at the bottom rung Conservative Party members who all had an equal vote. And that's one of the reasons she struggled so much, because the government didn't actually really want her in the first place. As for who's likely to take over, who's going to be the next Prime Minister, there are a few names I can throw out, but I really don't have much of a clue. Rishi Sunak is the most likely one, probably. He's probably the bookie's choice at this point. He came second in the leadership race, and that's who most people wanted, most MPs wanted at least. But he's also quite a controversial figure, and the fact that he lost the election 6 weeks ago, and now there's been some sort of chaos within the party, and Liz Truss has been forced to resign by her own party. And if he then wins the next election, it would look an awful lot like a bit of a coup, so it wouldn't be the best of optics. So there may be some kind of unity candidate put forward, someone like Ben Wallace, who's a lot more sensible, a lot more normal. Some people are saying that the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, might even be Prime Minister. Frankly, I have no idea at all. This announcement is 15 minutes old at this point, so I really don't have much else for you here. I just thought I'd try and keep you as updated as possible. As I've been saying in this video that I made last night and that you just watched, British politics right now are just insane. No one knows what's going on. It's moving incredibly quickly. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to have everything be as up to date as possible so that you guys are all clued up. One final thing, is this going to affect financial markets? My gut instinct simply says no, because Liz Truss was sort of the problem, or one of the big problems with the financial markets. And so her leaving should actually add some stability, even though all of her policies were already sort of gone away with and thrown away anyway. This is still just going to make the people who were worried about the cost of government borrowing or the tax cuts that the government was going to see, well, the people who were worried about that are going to be even more assured that it's not going to happen now. So this should be slightly good in that sense. Outside of that, thank you all for watching, and make sure to check out Diamond Standard in the link down below in the description. Until next time, stay stoic.